Well, I knew it was just about what was on there.
We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for your attendance and participation tonight. We welcome you to tonight's meeting. This is the 11th business meeting for 2017 of your City Board of Directors. At this time, I would like to call upon Dr. Jim Pennington for the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Director Randy Foley. Please rise.
My name is Dr. Pennington. I want to thank you for your service and for what you do. I know there are times to fast and pray, but this is a time to pray fast, and I'll do that. I do want to say that I live in Hot Springs. I love it here. My brother's name is used in the tub race here, you may be familiar with. I do a lot of work in Asia, in China and Vietnam and Burma, and they don't have the rights of freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, freedom of religion, redress of grievances. And yesterday we sent funds to one of those countries to pay for the medical bills of a family who was stoned, dragged from their house destroyed, the property destroyed, for praying. So even though this process is messy and sometimes contentious, thank God for it. Would you join me in prayer? Gracious Father, you are just and you are compassionate. Make us like you. You reward the upright and care about the broken, the hurting, the marginalized. Lead us in your ways. You come where you're invited and give grace to the humble. Come now, Lord. Give us wisdom, give us guidance. Bless, O Lord, every person who's gathered here tonight. Thank you for our nation and for our city. Bless, O Lord, the city of Hot Springs National Park, Arkansas. In your name, Jesus, and through your blood we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
Would you please join me in the pledge? I pledge
Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I hereby call this meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Davidson.
Here.
Jones.
here.
Clark.
Here.
Williams.
Here.
Garcia.
Here.
Foley.
Here.
McCabe.
Here. This time we'll consider approval of the agenda. Directors, are there any additions, deletions, corrections, or modifications to the agenda as presented? If none, I'd take Director Williams.
I'm going to make the motion that we approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Got a motion by Director Williams, seconded by
Ms. Garcia.
Director Garcia. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved. This time we'll do a consideration of the approval of the minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes. The special meetings of June 13th and June 23rd, and the regularly scheduled meeting on June 20th. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to those minutes? Director Williams.
I move for approval of the minutes for all 3 of these meetings.
Got a motion to approve. We got a second?
Second.
Seconded by Director Clark. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Minutes are approved. We have a short agenda, but we have items that are of significant interest to a number of people here in the room. We have a full, all the chairs are filled except the 2 up front. Kind of like church at times. But be as it may, we welcome all your participation. We do have a procedure that speakers have 3 minutes to address the board, and we'll listen and take notes. And if we have questions of the speakers, we will do so. But we do ask that you speak to the 3 minutes and not go over. If everyone in the room spoke for 3 minutes, we'd be here till about midnight. If the comments that have been made are similar to your comments, and your name is called, you can indicate, that your comments have already been made and you're for or against a certain item. But if there is an item or a comment that hasn't been made, please feel free to come forward. We're here as long as you want to keep coming forward. But we do ask, in the interest of time, that comments are not duplicated. And if an item on the agenda that you're interested in comes and goes, and you want to leave and go home and spend time with your family, you're free to leave early. We just ask that you do so quietly. Okay? So with that, we'll begin our business section. But we have a nice little treat tonight. We have a guest. My guest tonight is Kaylee McGow. Kaylee, can you step forward here? And Kaylee is just a little bit shorter than the podium, a little bit. Kaylee became aware of her when she did a good deed without anybody asking her to do. She presented a sum of money of close to $700 to Animal Control Director Dan Bugg and Police Chief Jason Stacey for the animal shelter. And tell us how you did that, Kaylee.
Okay, well, I made the bracelets. They were not that hard.
You're right.
They were, took me only 3 minutes to make them.
3 minutes. She timed it. This is a person who's interested in time management.
Engineer.
Well, Kaylee made bracelets, and I have one. This is a thin blue line bracelet. Got a couple beads in it, and I was real impressed with what she did, and I met with her a couple weeks ago and asked her to bring some so I could buy one. And so right now there's only two types of people in the world: those who are wearing one of Kaylee's bracelets and those who are not. So all you guys before you leave, you need to get your order in. But I think it's real important for us to recognize the achievements of our youth, and at such a very young age,
Yes.
who set out an example. How she picked this, I have no idea. How did you pick this?
Well, kids at school started making them, and I just started washing them, and I wanted to...
Well, what was your idea of selling it and then donating the money to the animal shelter?
Well, I just loved animals, so I knew animals were at the animal shelter, so I knew a strategy that I knew, so I started doing it, and I just wanted to do it to the animal shelter.
Well, you have a big heart in that little body of yours, and so we do appreciate that. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little photo of you, and we have a little certificate here and a little card from from one of the spokes dogs at the animal shelter. Okay.
Okay.
And since they couldn't put paw prints on it, each of the city directors signed the card, and there's a little something extra in there that I put in so that you can continue getting the necessary supplies for your bands, and then you can do with that maybe you'll make a bunch more and sell a bunch more. Okay? So we'll meet you right here, Kaylee. And these three directors, please rise, and the rest of us will swing around real quick. So just take a second.
Yeah.
A little certificate we have here. It says, "Leading by example, Kaylee McGow. Thank you for caring and giving support." Terry, right here.
Are we?
Step forward just to here.
Here's $20 for.
How you go?
She's cleaning up.
Are we centered? Are we good?
We're good.
Here we go. I will take a free picture.
We're good. All right.
Thank you very
Congratulations.
much. The mayor has one.
May I intervene today?
Certainly.
Okay, you keep the change.
This young lady came out today and picked out herself a puppy. And we
Oh, my
sent her
goodness.
home with a puppy. And so after work, Michelle went out and shopped for some supplies for this puppy she took home, and also some scrapbooking material. So she's such a creative child. So we wanted to give her a gift for herself and her new puppy, what she took home today from the shelter.
Thank you. Well, Kaylee, you set an example for all of us big people too. Okay, so thank you very much. You're a wonderful person.
Thank you.
And the McGows are you're free to stay, but we're going to be here for a while. If you feel like you'd like to get up and leave, you're free to do so. Oh. We have the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, that's a nice segue in. The first item on my report is about animal control. And the Animal Control Summer Adopt-a-thon will be held this Saturday, the 22nd, from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at 319 Davidson Drive. Our intent is to clear the kennels and adopt as many animals out of the shelter as possible. We'll be serving free hot dogs and provide all types of water fun activities for the kids. Summer Adopt-a-thon is a free community event and one of the many outreach programs that our city departments sponsor. So please remember that. The date again is Saturday, the 22nd from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., 319 Davidson Drive. Also up tonight, I want to point out in the back of the room, there are these. This is the board priorities booklet that we have published here at the city. All the directors have this. Inside the booklet, you'll find that there are a number of goals, 8 of them altogether. We're, about 6 months into the year, so we're ahead on a couple of these goals. Some of them are longer term. They're things that could take, several years to accomplish. It's a 2 years goals booklet, and we want to encourage people to be aware of what the board's goals are. Of course, those goals are in addition to the regular daily services that all of our departments provide. But it does our budgets target those goals because those are our priorities from the board. Also want to mention that community development block grant applications are due August 25th. We'll be accepting those applications for neighborhood revitalization, affordable housing, and economic development projects. Projects must fulfill certain objectives and comply with a number of federal regulations and requirements. For more information, we encourage you to contact our staff member who handles the program. Her name is Michelle Sistelli at 276-7934. And also news from our solid waste division. They've saved $45,000 so far in tipping fees this year, and that is from the landfill. That's basically things that don't go into the landfill this year, and that includes recyclable glass, newsprint, plastic, cans, cardboard, office paper collected through the Earth Angel Curbside program at our drive-through drop-off center and at the regional recycling center. We'd like to thank you, the environmentally minded citizens of our community that kept 2,611 tons of recyclables out of the landfill during the past year and helping us become a more sustainable city. And then finally, the Public Works Department has reported that over the last several weeks we've experienced higher than normal downtime of the parking deck elevator. The higher than normal usage of the elevator is apparently the cause of overheating the oil, the hydraulic fluid that runs the elevator. And so there weren't long enough resting periods. The elevator was designed 15 years ago, and there have been improvements in this technology since then. So the parking deck, the increased usage of the parking deck elevator we've ordered a cooler essentially to cool more quickly the hydraulic fluid, and that'll be installed here shortly, and we're hoping that will resolve the issue and reduce the downtime of the elevator. And that's all I have this evening, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any upcoming events that the directors would like to announce at this time?
I do.
Yeah, Director Davidson.
Thank you. August 13th, the Park Avenue Community Association will have a block party from 5 to 8 p.m. at Reed and Mountain Valley, and you're all invited. And what's your name? Oh gosh, the event planning, the group that does all the barbecue now. I'll think of it next time. And about the animal services, a week ago Thursday, I got a phone call from some new neighbors, the ladies who are doing the really cute cottage courts up on Park Avenue, and they called me about 10 o'clock Thursday night, and they said, Suzanne, we found this beautiful dog running down the middle of Park Avenue, and our little bitty yappy dogs don't like it one bit. And could we bring it to you? We know you have dogs. So they brought this, I wish I could show it to you, but they brought this beautiful, probably Irish setter and lab mix. I didn't know he was a lab mix until I took him to the shelter. He was sweet, adorable, got along with all the animals in my house, including the cat. She wasn't crazy about him, but I took it to the shelter the next day, and Dan saw it, and he was outside and saw it in the car as I brought him up, and he checked his teeth. He said, "Oh, he's less than a year old," and somebody felt his feet and said, "Oh, that's a lab." And everybody just thought he was so pretty. They said he won't stay here long. Hopefully not. But as an owner of 2, now living 3 rescued animals, I urge everybody to take in those pets. They make wonderful pets. Rescue animals are with you for life, and they won't let anybody harm you for sure. I have one that's almost vicious. And then a reminder of August 13th, Park Avenue Community Association Block Party. Thank you.
Any other directors have an upcoming? Karen, Director Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to announce to the public that the police department is currently taking applications for the next Citizens Police Academy. The class starts September 5th, and they are currently taking applications through August 18th online or at the police department. Someone will help you there. And it is a great service that the police department provides for our citizens, and I graduated a few years ago, and I think now they're up to class 18, and they do. You would be amazed everything that the police department does in Hot Springs, and I'd encourage anyone that has any interest to apply, and you won't regret it if you attend. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the directors or city staff?
Yes, Mayor, I wanted to ask Kathy Selman, our planning director, and Mike Scott, our building official, to come forward for a minute, if they would. As they're working their way up here, I want to remind the board that in the past few days we've seen the sale announced of the Arlington Hotel. The Arlington is still, I believe, the largest hotel in the state based on the number of rooms. It's also an old hotel. It's had lots and lots of maintenance issues. Some of us have seen the maintenance issues from the outside, some from the inside. These two folks have done an incredible job trying to enforce our code. I want to remind people, I know there's a lot of interest in the Arlington and what's going to happen to it. And having met with the former owners, I think they had a business model that frankly ended up with a lot of deferred maintenance that we're all concerned with. This is a landmark hotel. It's something we care about deeply in the community. But our building code is primarily focused on safety issues, and it doesn't always guarantee, in fact, it doesn't guarantee us the culmination or restoration of a beautiful building. But I don't believe that I think the business model that was there in the past, the profit margin for that building, the business model that was being used was, I think, affected by the diligent work of these two people, as well as other field inspectors and engineers in the city. And I just want to say thank you. Keep it up. The Arlington's not out of the woods yet, but we're going to keep doing our job. They're going to keep doing their job, and we appreciate the support of this community and also this board for the tough work that these folks have to do. So thank you, guys.
Thank you. At this time, we'll review the consent agenda. These are business items, are routine in nature, and are considered as one without discussion. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Mr. Mayor, I so move.
A motion by Director Jones,
Second.
seconded by Director Davidson. Please call the roll.
Jones,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Garcia,
Aye.
Foley,
Aye.
Davidson,
Aye.
McCabe.
Aye.
It's approved.
The consent agenda is adopted. Under new business, we have about 3 or 4 items, all resolutions. So at this time, we'll consider resolution R-1707. Council, could you please read by title only?
Yes, Mayor. Resolution R-17-107, a resolution of the City of Hot Springs, Arkansas, supporting federal and state legislation to ensure the collection of sales tax from all Internet online sales, thereby creating a fair market for all businesses and consumers regardless of location. That concludes your reading. If you would, now entertain a motion second to adopt and have discussion if you
Have a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Director Clark, seconded by Director Jones. We have a staff member report.
I'll into this one, Mayor.
Please
Thank you, sir.
proceed.
This item comes to the board. Honestly, it is a resolution that will essentially level the playing field for your online retailers versus your brick and mortar retailers by way of a support resolution. And what you're doing is asking the governor of Arkansas to add a specific piece of legislation that would enable the state of Arkansas to collect online sales tax to a special called session, which is likely to be coming later in the fall. And also it has a two-part to it. It also requests that the federal legislators carry forward some of the work that they've done to bring online sales tax at the federal level as well. Because currently the way it's set up, an online retailer does not have to collect and remit sales tax if they don't have basically a nexus is what they call it. So if you don't have a storefront or you don't have a distribution center, which by and large that's most retailers. There's only so many distribution centers that cover those type of online retail. And currently the way that the dynamics are, you've got about 8.1% of all purchases are online purchases, which is a tremendous volume of purchases. And really what this does, as I said earlier, it levels the playing field and allows the brick and mortar retailers to compete on an even field in a fair manner with those online retailers.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the directors? We had nobody sign up from the public, so any director comments? Hearing none, we can call the roll.
Clark,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Garcia,
Aye.
Foley,
Aye.
Davidson,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
McCabe.
Aye. Resolution adopted. Next resolution for consideration is number R-17-107. Oh, excuse me. No, R-17-108. And I asked the city attorney to read by title only.
Resolution R-17-108, a resolution approving an appeal of Planning Commission approval with 7 conditions for a conditional use at 103 Marquette for erection and operation of a municipal water tower. That concludes your reading by title. Mayor, if you would, entertain a motion second to adopt and have discussion, if any.
I so move.
Second.
Director Garcia made the motion, seconded by Director Jones. And Planning Director Salmon will be providing a presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Kathy Selman, Planning and Development Director. We're here tonight to take a look at an appeal regarding a Planning Commission decision that was made at their regularly scheduled meeting last month. I was sitting here thinking about this and recalling that my mother, who's no longer with us, could never understand what it is that I do. And so I thought it might be a good idea to explain what it is we're here to do tonight. This is an appeal of a specific request regarding 103 Marquette Street. There was an application to look at whether this location would be suitable for a municipal water tower to be constructed there. There's been a lot of conversation and letters to the editor and so forth that apparently either were informed by my mother or they seek to broaden what is a very narrow question that we're looking at tonight. This is not about where to locate a water tank. We know that the city needs additional water storage facility. We're not evaluating alternative sites. We're only looking at 103 Marquette Street. And the Hot Springs Code anticipates that there will be uses that, while they might be okay in one spot, won't be okay in another. And instead of saying across the board that those uses can be permitted anytime the zoning is assigned to a property, the code provides us with more of a microscope to look at that requested use and how it fits into a specific set of facts, into a specific site, a specific neighborhood. So we're here tonight to try to determine whether Planning Commission correctly evaluated this request, which they assigned the identifier conditional use 170130. Did they look at the correct things? Did they look at all of the information that was available? And did they, in following the steps outlined by the code, did they make a right decision? What they did is recommend approval of this request to site a 170-foot water tower at 103 Marquette Street. The subject property is zoned R2, which is suburban residential. It's improved with one single-family home. It's located inside the corporate limits of Hot Springs and has a total land area of approximately 1 acre. The subject property is surrounded by single-family homes that are zoned R2, again, suburban residential, on the north, the west, and the southwest. Immediately to the east is New Life Church Hot Springs, also R2 zoned. Cornerstone, a regional shopping center, and the Martin Luther King Jr. Expressway, both are located within approximately 500 feet. Now, the applicant submitted a 9-page narrative and project summary to Planning Commission. Planning Commission looked at that. There was extensive testimony at that hearing, most of which focused on neighborhood people who did not want to see this added to their neighborhood. There was a lot of information that was provided at that public hearing. In addition to the neighborhood testimony, there was a detailed explanation and PowerPoint presentation by the applicant, the applicant's consultant, which demonstrated how similar facilities have been cited in other areas. Among other things, he demonstrated that in areas with a similar type of a tower, and again, this is a composite-style elevated tank with a concrete pedestal and a welded steel bowl. We saw photographs that demonstrated that very lovely homes were situated in close proximity to similar facilities. We also saw a picture that demonstrated, with regard to safety, that after a tornado where a neighborhood had been destroyed, the only thing left standing was a water tower. Again, very similar in design to what we are looking at here in this appeal. The code asks an appellant to provide information on 4 different areas in making the appeal. The first is a summary of any reasons provided by Planning Commission concerning the decision made in the case. The second is to provide reasons why the applicant of the appeal contends that Planning Commission erred in its decision. Number 3, reasons a reversal will better serve the health, safety, and welfare of the community. And number 4, new and pertinent information since Planning Commission action. That's information that would not, could not, and wasn't available at the time of the hearing. It's information that only became available after Planning Commission took its action. I am not going to go through all of the steps of this appeal. We would be here all night. And the information is all in your packets and has been made available to the public online. First of all, a summary of any reasons provided by Planning Commission concerning the decision made in the case. Planning Commission made findings, and they also approved this item with 7 conditions, all of which address the items that are contained in Hot Springs Code for evaluation of a conditional use. Regarding those conditions, there is specific language saying that all construction activity has to follow strictly the development plan, all approval conditions, and minimum standards, codes, rules, regulations, and policies as may now or hereafter be required or enacted by the City of Hot Springs, the State of Arkansas, and or the United States of America, including the Arkansas Fire Prevention Code, whether these things are or are not submitted for staff review or Planning Commission approval. The applicant has to obtain approval from the city for a proposed landscape prior to installation. All light sources, and there are 3 conditions that relate to light sources. We're talking about a very tall structure, and the light conditions are that lighting shall be fully downcast, be shielded to prevent glare onto the eyes of drivers or pedestrians. Point sources of lighting shall not be visible from beyond the property on which the lighting source is located. All proposed lighting shall not create an artificial atmospheric glow or spill into the yards, businesses, homes, and streets of adjacent residential properties and communities trying to preserve the residential character of their development. Signs are not approved by the development plan. Any signs will need to be individually approved and permitted prior to their being installed. And finally, that maintenance of the site shall be the responsibility of the City of Hot Springs. Again, Planning Commission made findings before they made this decision. They looked at the code requirements. They noted how those requirements were met and then approved with 7 conditions. As to why the applicant of the appeal contends the Planning Commission erred in its decision, there was mention of safety concerns. Condition number 1 clearly addresses safety as well as other concerns regarding site development. Concerns about impact on property values. There was no demonstration by the appellant of what the impact on property values could be expected to be. And as I mentioned, The applicant's representative, Matt Dunn, at the hearing displayed photographs of new home construction in an area of a similarly designed and constructed water tower in other communities, including Bryant. Failure to consider impact on air rights, which the appeal noted was obstruction of view. The Hot Springs Code does not require that obstruction of view as a standard of approval. Failed to consider impact of construction noise on residents. Again, the condition number 1 speaks to that in that any rules in effect must be observed, including noise ordinance and limits on time of day for construction activity. The appeal alleged that Planning Commission failed to consider impact on traffic access during construction and operation of the tank. And again, no evidence of impact on traffic access. The plan is required to provide a traffic management plan for any construction project such as this, and that this would not be an exception to that. Failed to consider impact on home ownership rates. Again, there's no evidence of impact provided, and again, Planning Commission considered photographs demonstrating well-maintained new neighborhoods in proximity to such towers, and that Planning Commission failed to identify alternative rejected sites. Now, again, this is not about is this the best site that is available. The application only asks if we are looking at 103 Marquette Street, can the requirements be met with conditions? Planning Commission's determination is that they can be met with conditions. Number 3, regarding reasons a reversal will better serve health, safety, and welfare of the community. The appellant stated that reversal will maintain the residential integrity of the neighborhood, and no evidence was provided in support of that allegation. This is an older subdivision. 16 lots have been developed, 22 are vacant. The home that is at 103 Marquette, for example, was built in 1965. So there has been plenty of time for the neighborhood to build out, and without a water tower, it has not. Again, the appellant looks to integrity. The proposal itself responds to a need identified by the Arkansas Department of Health that the City of Hot Springs needs to have additional water storage capacity. The conditional uses that are approvable in this zone district, suburban residential, includes churches, charitable institutions, public buildings, utility substations, and similar uses and accessory uses deemed to be in character with the zone. And Planning Commission's determination was that with the conditions that this requirement can be met. The 1 acre size and the shape of the subject property is large enough to accommodate the proposed use while making sure that there is street level screening, adequate spacing between the proposed use and surrounding homes. It will be designed in a way to be as aesthetically pleasing as possible and to
Please allow the speaker to continue. Kathy?
Thank you, Mayor. In order to minimize visual impact to the neighborhood, the applicant intends to conserve as many existing trees as possible and will provide aesthetic buffering around the perimeter of the tank and the property. The applicant's designs for perimeter buffering and fencing deliberately are consistent with a residential setting. The proposed use does not emit noxious or offensive emissions. Landscaping, fencing, and open space will be required, will be maintained by the City of Hot Springs. Another statement of the appeal is that this will eliminate the safety risks associated with building a 170-foot tall tower in close proximity to occupied homes and a church. There are 7 safety factors that have been noted in the application that are required with regard to design and construction of this tank. In addition, the use has been approved by the Federal Aviation Authority, and there's a letter to that effect in the file as a determination of no hazard to air navigation. The proposed use conforms to all applicable provisions of the code for the zoning district in which it is to be located, and it facilitates documented public need at this location. Height is exempt from district height requirements per the Hot Springs Code, as categories of chimneys, church steeples, cooling towers, scenery lofts, tanks, water towers, and so forth are exempt. Eliminate noise from construction and operation of the tower. The noise from construction and operation are governed by other Hot Springs Code requirements and will apply. Negative impacts on traffic, we've covered that. Air rights of nearby residences, we have also covered that. The Hot Springs Code 16272, standards for conditional uses, specifically says that the Planning Commission may approve, deny, defer, or modify conditional use requests based on findings of fact with regards to the standards set forth below, and air rights are not identified within those standards. The appeal further states that a reversal will preserve property values, thereby maintaining tax base which provides taxes for vital public safety services such as police and fire protection. There's no evidence in the appeal that tower construction will affect the tax base that supports vital public safety. And finally, reversal will eliminate potential drainage issues on nearby property during construction and operation of the tank. And as with other development projects, construction will be subject to stormwater measures specifically in place to contain drainage within property boundaries. And this, again, is covered by Planning Commission approval condition number 1. New and pertinent information since Planning Commission action. There is nothing that is identified in the appeal that would fall into the category of pertinent information since Planning Commission action. There is some reference to alternative sites. It names those alternative sites. Again, this is not a site selection item. This was strictly a request for conditional use approval of a water tower at 103 Marquette Street. Planning Commission approved it. They made findings. They established conditions. And there is, in summary, nothing in the appeal that would indicate that Planning Commission made a mistake in making that decision. Now, again, this is not establishing a requirement that a water tower go on this land. That's not what this is. This is to establish whether a water tower could be built at 103 Marquette Street, meeting the requirements of the code and it would appear that Planning Commission has made that determination as required, but this is not a specific requirement that the tank go there. So in conclusion, the recommendation is that the board would deny the resolution approving an appeal of Planning Commission's action to erect a water tank at 103 Marquette Street, zoned R2. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director Selman, Planning Director Selman. We have
Would now be an appropriate time if we have questions for her before she sits down?
I think we
gonna
can bring her
have
back
public
up afterwards.
Okay,
I think
thank
we
you.
want to hear from the public. And we have a number of speakers, and as I indicated earlier, if your comments have already been made by another individual, or your name is called, you can indicate that. You can stand up from your chair and say, "My comments have already been made." These are one of those tricky questions when the way we word it, it's the approval of the appeal. And as Planning Director Selman indicated, that the recommendation is to deny the appeal. I know that everybody signed up on the against side, which I assume is counter to what your interest is, because the against side would be to vote against the appeal, which would, in theory, uphold the Planning Commission's decision, okay? So I'm going to pretend that you're on the other side, and there was nobody on the for side, which would be to grant the appeal, to uphold the appeal, or to approve the appeal. So I'm going to say these are all the people who would not want to have it in their neighborhood. So and if I mispronounce your name, I apologize. Part of it may be me, and part of it may be my ability to read writing. So we have Carol, I want to say Bridges. Am I halfway close? Mm-hmm. Please come forward and restate your name and your address, please. In what district you are in.
My name is Carol Bridges. I live at 203 Marquette Place. I'm in District 5. And I've been a resident of that neighborhood for 40 plus years. I do not think the Planning Commission was given all the correct information when this issue was brought before them. The engineers said there would be no impact to the property values or neighborhood. The first thing that people look for is location, location, location. A study was not done as to the effect it would have on property values. That was what we were told. But you can't sit here and tell me that people would intentionally buy homes that have a 170-foot, 3 million gallon water tank that you have to drive by to get into the neighborhood. Curb appeal says it all. And I think it would be hard-pressed to find a realtor or appraiser that would put in writing that this would not affect the market prices or potential buyers wanting to look at properties. When a planning commissioner was asked if the issue could be tabled for further study, the city engineer told them that the closing on the property was very soon. It was already on the agenda for the board of directors. The bond money needed to be spent soon, or at least started, and it was necessary for the vote to be that night. He also stated there were no other sites that would work and fit all this criteria. Now it is being said that there were some other sites that could work. They are more expensive, but they are not in the middle of a neighborhood. I urge you to send this back to the Planning Commission for another site. And thank you for hearing me.
Director Garcia.
Mr. Bridges, you were at I understand correctly, you were at the Planning Commission meeting?
Yes.
and a commissioner on the planning commission asked if this issue could be tabled for further study, and staff told them that they needed to act on it that night.
Yes. I don't know the planning person's name.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. This time I would call upon Susan Batterton to please come forward. Ms. Batterton?
For the board's information and that of the public, it's in the packet, but Mrs. Batterton is the appellant of record, and so it is her procedural due process that is at stake here. So I wanted to bring her up so she could present her information.
So
I
please
could
say,
explain why all those lots are vacant, but I don't have time. Would you pass those out?
I'll make sure they get them.
Could they have them now so they could look at them?
Sure.
Because I'm going to refer to them as I talk, if that's all right. So.
please state your name and address and district, please.
I am Susan Batterton, and I live at 102 Broadmoor Subdivision, 102 Marwinette in the subdivision. At the June 8th Planning Commission meeting, we were told by the representative for Christ Engineers that water towers in neighborhoods are a modern trend. In a memo to the director of District 5, she was told that it is a common practice in neighborhoods. Christ Engineers provided pictures of attractive towers to support these statements, but the commission did not get the entire picture, in my opinion. They relied on what they were shown and told because there was not time to table the proposal and study it further. I checked on the sites in Arkansas and have shared with you some of the pictures I took, and that's what's in the folders that I passed out. The Arkadelphia tank pictured is on Interstate 30, surrounded by commercial property for sale. There is not a house in sight. On the next picture, the Bryant Tower, it looms over the shopping center along I-30. I assume there must be a neighborhood back there, but again, there is not a house in sight, as you'll notice in the picture. In Malvern, their tower was built in a neighborhood on Henry Street in 2000. If anything, it shows in the next picture, which is one of the houses across the street, how a tower can destroy a neighborhood in less than 20 years. None of these tanks holds more than 1.5 million gallons. The Colonies Tower, which was also representative, is in downtown Dallas near a cemetery in the middle of the urban sprawl for Dallas. I didn't get a picture of that. They showed a picture of Melrose, but I have yet to learn what state that is in. They couldn't share that with us. When showing pictures of Broadmoor subdivision, they shared photos of 4 houses, then the church and parking lot, before going a half mile to the Central and Pecos intersection. They failed to mention all the families behind the tower site. They implied this was no longer a viable neighborhood, but an area ready for transition and encroachment. Isn't the Planning Commission supposed to protect our neighborhoods? Several years ago, on one of our visits to the board to oppose a rezoning effort, Ms. Elaine Jones commented, "Why don't y'all just leave these people alone?" I couldn't agree with her more. The proposed tank site sits on the crest of a hill. If they're just a little bit mistaken about water flow, it could create a nightmare for the surrounding houses. The proximity of these houses I have noted on your map of the proposed site. Staff stated that upon completion there will be no change in stormwater effect, but I see the effects of stormwater planning in my own backyard every time it rains heavily. Push the broken concrete up down here, add gravel, plant grass, that should take care of it, or so the city staff said. Well, it didn't take care of the runoff. It looked good on paper, but it really did not work. And just 10 days ago, a lady turned around my driveway and asked if I know where the lot for sale is. Her elderly husband cannot walk and needed to get rid of the house with steps. They wanted to build a new home. I told her they were planning to build a water tower in the neighborhood, and I can't even describe the look on her face. She didn't want to know anymore. We don't have a formal neighborhood association, but we communicate informally, and tonight we stand together in opposition to the water storage tower being built in our neighborhood. Would all those in favor of not having this in our neighborhood and feel the same way I do and agree with me, please raise your hands. I think my time's up.
Thank you.
So, can I finish this? I just have a little.
Pardon?
I just have a little if I can finish.
We'll give you a little more time since
All right,
you're
when
the-
we read the mission statement for the Board of Directors and your visions, we note that you will maintain the high quality of life while improving the character and quality of all neighborhoods. You work with and for the residents. You promote active, vital neighborhoods. And that's why I encourage you to support your mission statement, your visions, and deny the conditional use permit. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll continue. Mr. Driggers.
Bob Driggers, number 3 Stonegate. I would like you to consider a few points about the water tower. From an engineering standpoint, this is a good location. Very good location. Good elevation. However, from a public relations standpoint, this is a horrible location. I mean, it's pretty easy to go to this site and look a few hundred yards to the east, a few hundred yards to the west, up in Belk's parking lot. Be a perfect place to locate this. If you look at the topographic map, you'll find there's not more than about 20 feet difference in elevation between those areas. And a couple of other things you could consider. Newspaper today reported there's no zoning or other provision for a water tower. So here is your board tonight with ordinance making authority using a conditional use permit for a water plant. It's going to be interesting to see how you work your way out of the lawsuits that refer to this as a deceptive practice. I was once in charge of engineering and planning for a water system for a city larger than Little Rock, down in South Texas, and we would really have been happy to find a hill 20 foot tall to put a water tower on. We constructed a new 2 million gallon water tank that included a wide support structure designed to house a fire station. There's the tower we built. Once the firemen discovered that they were living and sleeping below a ceiling that weighed over 16 million pounds, they refused to stay there. The fire station closed. Would you guys feel comfortable sleeping under 16 million gallon or 16 million pound ceiling? Or if you make it 3 million gallon tank, that's going to be well over 24 million pounds. That's what you're asking the people of this subdivision to do. Like I say, there's equally good locations. And the location you propose is ridiculous, simply ridiculous. You wouldn't need extra water storage capacity if you could use what you currently have. Health Department's latest survey, as long as every one of the sanitary surveys recently, have said you're not using 50% of the storage capacity you have, probably due to the poor maintenance. And my final comment should omit the mayor and our newest director, because you haven't been here long enough. But you seem legally just to be concerned what you can do, and you've got a proven record of ignoring the voice of the people of this city. You won't allow public televised commentary. You won't allow a public vote on a new city hall, a public vote on annexation, a public vote on property taxes. What you are about to demonstrate, in my view here again once tonight, is just how little you care about the citizens you're supposed to be representing.
Thank you. We'll go ahead with our next speaker, Laura Lawridge. Please state your name, address, and...
Laura Lockridge. I live in North Little Rock. My parents live at 203 Marquette. I grew up there. When we moved there, it was a very isolated area, and that's why we moved there. The few houses that are there are pretty much there when we moved. That's why we moved there. When the 90s came and the expressway went through, and then the shopping center, they promised my parents and the neighbors that there would be a 50-foot buffer of trees between the residence and the shopping center. That did not happen. The mountain that was behind my parents' house was decimated. Everything was gone up until the line of their property. Their house was full of dust and dirt for months and months and months. It was really terrible. I can't even begin to tell you how bad it was. And now we're talking about a 170-foot water tower that every day when they look out their windows or go out in their yards, that's all they're going to see, because it will be one block exactly from their front door. It will also have the lights. I understand the description of the lights, but I still cannot imagine that those lights are not going to attract the wrong kind of attention that a residential area wants or needs. I have this email that I received that it was written from one of the city employees. This area may have been quite a neighborhood at some point in time, but as you know, commercial growth with the city has had an impact. Yes, it has, but those people are still there because they still love the area despite what is all around them. Commercial development, the church and the expressway is all fine, but I believe that this water tower will be the last nail in their coffin. You're talking about a lot of senior citizens that moved there in the 70s for a reason. And now if they would try to move, they're not going to get anything for those houses, and y'all all know it. No one is going to want to move in an older neighborhood with a 170-foot water tower. And I also am very concerned about their safety. We're talking about trucks that are going to be going up and down Thornhill, which is a very narrow hill that you can't hardly see up the top, and there are no shoulders. Pack is coming in, no shoulders. So accidents could very easily come with this. And I just ask you to consider putting this in an area that is non-residential. Thank you.
Thank you. This time I call upon Mr. Paul Logan. Mr. Logan, please state your name and address and board district.
My name is Paul Logan. I live at 105 Marquette, directly next door to the proposed tower, and that is District 5. Now, I would ask you to approve the appeal on the grounds that the Planning Commission failed to meet one of the most basic requirements of any planning commission anywhere. Any zoning plan is designed, at least partially, to create a reasonable expectation of the use of the property in the foreseeable future. I purchased my house just 2 years ago in the process of retiring, looking for a nice, quiet neighborhood. Loved the cleanliness of the neighborhood, the fact it was a quiet neighborhood. But if you had told me that I would be next to a construction site and 3 million gallons of water, do you think I would have bought it? Mention was made of the impact of noise during the construction. Noise is a very serious pollutant. 85 dB of noise over one day can cause significant hearing loss. That's from the National Institute of Hearing Loss. Measured levels of construction of equipment. A bulldozer, 92 to 100 dB. Trucks, 80 to 92. Graders, 97 to 100. That is sustained noise next to my property. As if you're talking about distance, you're talking about approximately 150 feet from the center of the proposed tower to the center of my house. Now, much has been said about the pictures that have been shown of two towers that survived tornadoes with winds in excess of 200 miles an hour. True. And it might, once it's constructed. What happens if a tornado hits it during construction? Plus, what is the loading on the tower that's being planned here? According to the engineer's testimony at the first planning committee hearing, the wind loading for that tower is 90 miles an hour for sustained winds. Now, how often is that going to happen? Probably not that often. How many times would it take for me to take a swim down through the neighborhood? Once. I'm going to ask you this, and I'll close. I will offer any of you the opportunity, if this tower is built, to buy my house. How many of you would take me up on it? Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Mary Jo Estes. Miss Estes? Okay, thank you, Miss Estes. Ms. Virginia Staton? Please state your name, address, and district.
Virginia Staton. I live at 100 Dry Vista Right. Probably the only person here who doesn't live in the neighborhood. But I do read the newspapers, and what I've been reading has made me very uncomfortable. I feel like that these people are being run, just pushed aside, and run over roughshod. The paper today stated that that there were other places, that the coding was not correct in that area, that I just feel like the people are not getting the respect that they deserve. And I just don't think that's fair at all. And I find it very hard to keep my mouth shut or my fingers from typing when I find that that's something that is that unjust. I feel like that it said today that people are building under, close to water towers. Fine. If I want to build next to a water tower, then I don't have a gripe coming. But if you put one in my neighborhood, you'll be hearing from a lot of us. And I don't think that any of you would want one in your neighborhood either. And I appreciate you listening.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Ms. Judy Ellis. Ms. Ellis? Ms. Ellis? Yeah, and I know that all the speakers are on the, I guess you wrote it as against, and it's on the floor, and I know you want to show support for your speaker, but if you can hold the applause and we can move a little quicker through all these names. Ms. Ellis?
I'll try to sort through what's already been said, so it might take me a few seconds reading down through here, not to repeat anything. I'm Judy Ellis, and I live at 209 Marwinette Place. We built our home there about 40 years ago, and we own several lots, and we wanted a big yard, so that's why some of the areas are vacant, because we wanted big yards, which you can't find in other parts of the city. 170-foot tall structure with a spread of 115 feet at the top is in a subdivision is just not right when there's other sites in the city that can be utilized, and they have been approved by the FAA, and the city has looked at them. To visualize this size, that is 3 times the height of the Christ of the Ozarks statue in Eureka Springs, less 20 feet. And that's pretty tall, and I feel like everyone's seen that statue up there. And people down the bottom are itty-bitty. We were shown photographs of water towers in other towns. The one in Dallas, there was beautiful homes in front of them. Those homes were squunched together. The tower was in the background. But in Dallas, they don't have much land in Dallas, and those people take what they can get just to have a place to live. And as Susan mentioned, some of them that you looked at, those sites are so run down now, I wouldn't even want to drive through the area, much less live in them. There were 9 prospective locations that were considered by the city. However, only 5 of them were submitted to the FAA for approval. Of the 5, only 3 were cleared, and all 3 of these were unwilling sellers. We still don't know what happened to the other 4 sites, why they were not submitted. At the neighborhood residential meeting, another site was brought up, the Westminster Church, as a location because it's close to the pipeline. And some of the people there with the city thought that was great and said they would look into it and submit it to the FAA. And I just wondered if that has been submitted as a possible site for them. And I don't understand how the Planning Commission can reclassify a water tower that isn't in our zoning for permitted uses into a water treatment plant. That's like two different totally functions. It's like going to a rent house and saying, I can have a cat but not a dog, and I have a dog, so I'm just going to call it a cat. I mean, I don't know how, I don't understand that. The platform that the tower is going to be on is 140 by 140 concrete slab. It'll be really thick, killing the remaining of the trees on that property and our neighbor's property. So it's over time, it's going to take out more trees. And the stormwater will be a major problem because concrete does not absorb like the land does. And there will be a considerable humming from the unit itself. The tower crane that's going to be used during the erection of this will also have to have a special pad to be on and to support the crane's weight. I don't know if they looked into this yet. Tower cranes are very, very expensive to rent, and an 18-month construction schedule is not cost-effective. There will be numerous ins and outs. They told us it would not be all built at one time. There's numerous ins and outs of equipment and crews, and that is a major cost when you have to move equipment in and out. You just wouldn't believe the cost on that. And not to mention the nuisance to the neighborhood, the trucks going with the wheels, hopefully there'll be rubber wheels, keeping them hosed down, the dust that's going to come from the area. It will just be a terrible thing for the construction site. And another thing, the area is too small to have for a shakeout laydown area to put all of the materials that's going to be required to build this massive structure with. So where would they be putting that? And about our property values, they've talked about them. We were told at the neighborhood meeting our property values was not an issue as they did not see a negative impact to our properties. I think there needs to be an in-depth study because they said there wasn't one. A study to show short-term and long impacts of our property values. And then...
Dallas, I need you to kind of wrap up.
I'm sorry.
It's been off for a while. I let you go on for close to another minute.
So in closing, let's look at alternate sites to do this. There are commercial sites that wouldn't be in a neighborhood. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry I went over.
Bryce Ellis? Mr. Ellis?
Take his hat off.
I'm another one of those engineers. I've got
right,
my name is
Mr. Ellis.
Bryce Ellis,
Yeah, thank you.
3rd, 209 Marwinette. Dad's up here with me. I'm an environmental engineer. I'm also a mechanical design engineer. In environmental, I specialize in water and wastewater. Had projects for 2 years in Mosul, Iraq, and Tikrit, Iraq. I did what you guys are doing in part of it. The other part I was engineering. So, the lots. It was brought up that the lots that were not. There wasn't many houses there. Well, we covered of buying them up, but there's been an orchestrated effort since the Horners left, of trying to get our property, because a lot of property owners are property investors, wanting commercial use of it and everything. So that's one reason why that we don't have more houses there. The main thing on the tower, they showed us was going to have lights on it. Well, the thing is, the main purpose of this water tower is to furnish water. And I'm for a water tower, but not in our spot. It's to furnish water. What do you need lights on it for? Who's going to answer that? The thing is, you got to have an aviation light on it, and that's all. Y'all are wanting it for advertising. We don't need an advertising billboard in our neighborhood. You could save probably $150,000 by not putting the light system on it, and another $20,000 to $40,000 of paying the engineers to figure out how to do it. The road cost, there was on one property, it was the road cost. It was quoted as hundreds of thousands of dollars on the road. I guarantee you can get with the county, because they probably need a little extra money, and you could probably get it done for a little bit of nothing. And if you wanted to use your own resources, you could use them, because then it wouldn't cost you anything. And the thing that I'm against is the methodology of the way that it was selected for the site. Paper shows, we've seen some paperwork and some things that shows that the number one item was to get the cheapest cost on erecting this tower. Bottom line, don't worry about nothing else. I said you already saved yourself $150,000 to $180,000 by not putting lights on it. So, in essence, I suggest you, if you guys got a problem with what we're saying, table this and let's work on it some more. So, that's all I got.
Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Mr. Toth, Mark Toth.
Mark Toth.
I'm so sorry.
At 110 Montclair Lane. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm got my points by sentence, and if you need to ask questions on my points, I'll certainly answer your questions. This tower is nearly 5 times the maximum allowed height in a residential zone. It's exempt, but no other house or building would be allowed 5 times its height. You should inform staff they need to look at the code and change that. This water tower is classified as a water treatment plant. You've heard that. That's a misclassification. It's not a water treatment plant. It could have easily been classified as an outdoor storage wholesale, and it wouldn't be allowed in a residential area. I want to talk about the 2030 plan. This is an authorized plan. I've seen Planning Commission quote from this plan as justification for why projects are not allowed. This plan says that the city policy is to protect neighborhoods and that neighborhoods are the core of the city's communities, and city policy is to encourage reinvestment and the rebuilding of social, cultural, and economic connections within them. This tower won't do that. The plan states that city policy is to promote development that, quote, respects what exists nearby, both in terms of physical presence and in terms of cultural presence. This tower won't do that. The 2030 plan states city policy is to maintain and improve the safety, vitality, and attractiveness of Hot Springs neighborhoods. You've just heard people won't buy there. You're killing this neighborhood. This is a dagger through the heart of that community. The 2030 plan talks about considering adequate light and air use and occupancy of buildings when making planning decisions. You've been told they can't consider that. The 2030 plan says you can. This project, you can deny it. There's legitimate reasons as articulated in the 2030 plan. I'd like to point out that the letter, I'm going to switch tack, got to move along here. The letter from the Department of Health as justifying the need for the water tower, it actually gives another alternative. It's right there in the very last sentence of paragraph number 4 on the first page. It reads, indicate plans for additional storage capacity or, and amazingly, city staff ignores what follows after the word or, how current backup power is sufficient to continue service at the water treatment plant and booster stations. The city has emergency power backup at the water station. That's an alternative. It's done. I'd like to point out because I don't have much time, there are 2 things you may not be aware of. The health department has noted 9 deficiencies in the plan for the water tower, including failure to address if they have to drain the tank and where that water would go. You haven't seen this letter. Staff isn't showing it to you. And I'd also like to point out that in a letter in response to what the water department has put out, the city has talked about the need for, you're going to build a new water plant, and maybe that'll mitigate the need for water storage, and that staff thinks maybe 5 million gallons eventually is needed. So which neighborhood's going to be the lucky one to get the next tower? Are they going to want to build one up off of Quapaw because it's nice and elevated against West Mountain? Or maybe on Ramble Street because that's nicely elevated? You're going to be setting a precedent. allowing these developments, this tower in residential areas. It's inappropriate, and I would ask you, for the reasons I stated, the 2030 plan, and you do have legitimate reasons to say no. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Pat King. Ms. King.
Pat King, 219 Glade, District 1. Reading the newspaper where our city manager likes to dream. Well, his dreams are becoming other people's nightmares. One of the most famous dreams I'm sure we all know is Alice in Wonderland. And somewhere in Alice in Wonderland, the Cheshire Cat says, "It means what I say it means." And that's what we're doing again in Hot Springs. Well, it says no water treatment plant, but this is a water tower. It's also going to have noise for the whatever the motor is that moves the water from this level to way up yonder. There's no consideration for anybody's anything. And, you know, it's like the city doesn't care about what is written law. We have, Chief Stacy will tell you, this is a country of laws and not of men. If we don't have a rule of law, we don't have law and order. And the city tonight made another proposal to tax the internet, violation of Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution, third paragraph. The Congress regulates interstate commerce. You can't do it from the Hot Springs City Board just because it feels good. We need the rule of law, not the rule of men. Thank you.
Thank you. Last speaker to sign up is Mr. Skip Houston. Mr. Houston. Your name and address and directors.
Skip Houston, 155 Five Point Circle, still in the county, thank God. You all know that, most of you all know me as one of the people that's opposed to the forced annexation, but that's not what I'm here about tonight. We live a little ways to the south of the neighborhood that's affected, but what I see is a similar situation, and I see where the statistics are being put together, and you can, what's the old saying that there's liars, damn liars, and statisticians? You can prove just about anything with statistics, and there's been an engineering study, or there's been this or that or the other to establish that this is the only plausible place to put this, and I would just suggest that it's probably not. It would seem that the area over near Westminster Church is at least a possible consideration. There are probably others. I'm aware of the flight path restrictions at the FAA. I used to do some flying, and the FAA does have say on those kind of things. But the issue tonight is whether to approve, and Mr. Mayor, you worded it correctly, but whatever the exact wording is, it's kind of backwards sounding. But the issue is whether or not to approve, or I'm sorry, to reject the appeal. Is that, am I saying that correct?
The wording on is to approve the appeal.
Or approve the appeal.
It's always in the affirmative on that.
Your vote no would be to reject that appeal. Or
vote no would be to support the Planning Commission's decision.
All right. I would just suggest, you know, there are people that here whose lives are being affected in a very negative way. There's a lot of unanimity around the area of that proposed tower that there's got to be some better place. It might cost a few dollars more in the long run scheme of things, the millions of dollars that the city seems to find to buy old hotels and tear them down, to contract with the Corps of Engineers for water that we're not even going to get we're getting this water storage actually right now that we're not even using for several years. There's probably enough money to make up the difference on that. And you're affecting a lot of people's lives. A lot of them are elderly people. And it just seems like that some study should be done. Some additional sites should be considered. And to draw it back to what we've experienced with the city's attitude on the annexation, it's, you know, we're just going to do it because we can do it. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. There is a scale model of the tank out in the foyer out here. Okay, thank you. That completes the number of individuals who had signed up. Let me double check that, make sure I didn't miss anybody. No, I think I did miss somebody. Mr. Dan Tran. Is Mr. Tran? Please come forward.
That's my nail man.
Thank you. Come on forward.
Well, my name is Elliot. I'm actually speaking on his behalf. He is on, this is Dan, and he's on 202 Marquette, right across Mr. Bridge house. The tank will be his backyard. And I'm going to read some of his sentiment that he had written down for you. My name is Dan Tran. My home is at 202 Marquette. My family and I own a small business close by. We work long hours. When we get home, when I get home, I sit on back my deck to relax. I enjoy the peace and the trees and the quiet settings of my backyard. We have friends over, and they like to sitting in the backyard, and we visit. It helps me get through the week knowing that I can enjoy my backyard. How can I enjoy my backyard with a 150-foot tall water tower next door? The noise from construction will end the peace and quiet I have in my backyard, and I will have to look at this tower every day. I will have no choice. It will be my only view. All my hard work making a home will be lost if the tower is built. I cannot believe someone would do this to my neighborhood. I do not expect this to happen in America. In America, the peace and quiet of our home should not be taken away. I came from Vietnam. In Vietnam, the government does what it wants. You are told what to do. You have no choice. I came to America because I want freedom. I want choice. But now the city wants to build a 150-foot tall water tower in my backyard. And I'm being told that I must do this, what the city wants. I have no choice. This is not right. Please find someplace else to put the water tower. People should not have to live next to it. Thank you.
Thank you. So this does complete the citizens' part of those who wish to speak on the subject, and now we're into the Board of Directors discussion. Director Garcia.
I'd like to ask Ms. Selman some questions.
Director Salmon.
In the packet that we received, was everything in there that was given to the Planning Commission?
As far as I know, everything that was in Planning Commission's packet was forwarded for that purpose.
And health and safety, and you mentioned the regulations and the requirements for, during constructions, but is any consideration for health and safety given to the age and health of the residents of the community during the construction phase, and what health and safety issues that could be as a result?
I'm unaware of any adopted rule that establishes that standard.
I didn't ask if it was standard. Is there any consideration given to that?
Well, one of the speakers spoke about the nation of laws. Our standards derive from law.
You mentioned that the 4 items in a summary of reason why the Planning Commission erred, and better serve the health and safety of the community.
Mm-hmm.
So if that doesn't best serve the health and safety of the community, is that something to consider?
I'm sorry, if you could rephrase your question. I want to be sure I answer it.
Okay.
Please. We're just trying to be exact here.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand, because we weren't allowed to ask any questions or talk about this, so I'm wanting to make sure that I understand everything. But in your presentation, you mentioned about a site that better served the health and safety of community.
The request on this conditional use application that Planning Commission decided was only about 103 Marquette. I am so sorry. Marquette.
Well, in the information in the packet, it said that this was the lowest cost site, but I did not see any evidence of that. What was the evidence presented to the Planning Commission that that was the lowest price?
There was no specific information, as I recall, presented to Planning Commission that this was the lowest cost. Again, that the lowest cost does not play into what the code requires for a conditional use evaluation.
And I heard a testimony that during the Planning Commission's meeting on this issue, a commissioner asked if this item could be tabled and for more information to be obtained. And the staff told them in response that this required immediate action.
I may have erred in my note-taking, but I believe that testimony referred to the engineer answering that question. Would
you repeat that, please?
I think that the person here tonight said that the engineer gave that response.
Well, isn't he on the staff of Hot Springs?
Yes.
Okay. But so they were told that was not what needed to happen, that it needed to be addressed that night.
I don't recall.
Please.
Okay.
Gary Carnahan is here and has indicated that he can answer that question more completely, if that would help you.
Okay.
City Engineer, Mr. Carnahan.
Yes, thank you, Gary Carnahan. When that question came up, I explained to them why we would like to keep moving forward. We had an offer and acceptance with the client, and they were not with the client, but with the property owner, and we had set a target date for a closing for that property. We were working with a bond issue where we needed to spend the money in this calendar year, and we've been working on the project for a long time, looking for a site, and had concluded that this was the site we recommended. And so I explained to them we would like to move forward. We didn't say you can't table the motion. I just explained what I just told you. And from that, they said, let's move forward.
Mr. Carnahan, do you recall why there was a question of tabling it? Were they looking for more information on property values or engineering information, or were they just delaying?
It was I don't know. Just one Planning Commission member just asked the question, can we table it? They didn't say why or if they wanted to. And then when I responded, like I did there with you, then they moved on.
Okay, thank you.
But since you're standing up, Gary, and it's not all that relevant, but I'm just curious, what is the minimum area that you need or that the city needs for this site? This is an acre.
We have been looking for a 1 acre site.
Okay. It needs to be at least 1 acre. It could be more, but not less.
Yes, sir. Or it would be very difficult if we had, we looked at another site that was less, and the contractors we talked to explained to us how more difficult it was going to be and how they would have to use special equipment to construct the tank and how much more expensive it would be. And as someone else pointed out, if we have an acre, then we have room for our lay-down area and to park our equipment, keep all the equipment on the site and all the materials that we're working with on that 1 acre site. So we really feel like that's the correct size for this tank project.
But it could be more, but no less than an acre.
Yeah, it could be less. but it would require additional, more difficult construction methods.
Okay.
And more expensive construction methods.
Okay, and really, that's not necessarily germane to what we're voting on, but I do want to call Kathy back and ask her two more questions.
Director Salmon, thank you.
Kathy, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked you at the agenda meeting last week, which is, how important is public input to the Planning Commission in reaching its decisions?
The purpose of a public hearing, and in this particular type of a use, a conditional use, has a public hearing where people are notified by mail, we advertise it in the newspaper, and we post a notice on the site saying that a public hearing is to be held, and here's the time, here's the place. The purpose of the public hearing is to discover information relevant to the standards in the code. Planning Commission must make its decision based upon the standards in the code. If the public is in possession of information that was not available in any other way, then we need to know what that information is. And that's the purpose of the public hearing. There can be a lot of testimony at a meeting, but it isn't necessarily germane to the decision to be made.
So opposition from a group of neighbors is really not, they hear it, but it's not necessarily something that they consider.
It's not usually a standard of the code. The code is adopted also through a public hearing. And people who have an interest come, they read it, they do whatever. When there are amendments or giant amendments where a whole code is rewritten, that information is publicized as well. And there's a public hearing in front of the board, such as we have tonight, and the board calls for testimony and makes a decision that the proposed amendment to the code or new code best serves the interests of the city as a whole. And so the code isn't something that you order from Amazon. It's something that you put together with great diligence and with public participation. So, sometimes there are people who disagree with what's in the code, but it's not a unilateral decision to establish a code requirement.
In this instance, the Planning Commission approved the conditional use permit submitted by the city.
It did.
But what would have happened if the city said, we've got two other sites that we might want to consider. Let's just submit all three of them and see what the Planning Commission decides on those.
What would be the method that's being used there?
But what this implies is that by granting this conditional use permit, that this is going to be the city site. Or why would we take it up to begin with in the first place?
Yes.
You see what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying.
We could have said, okay, you know what, we got three sites here. Let's submit all three applications to the Planning Commission and let them sort it out for us as to what they think with regard to the code. That's bizarre, but what I'm getting at is, it looks like, I know what you're saying, that we could approve what the Planning Commission, or let's put it this way, we could deny the appeal and uphold the Planning Commission and then turn right around and say, but you know what? We don't need this site after all. Why would we put ourselves through all this?
It's not
a fair question. That's not a fair question for you. That should go up to somebody higher up the food chain in the organization.
Thank you.
But I think thank you. That's all I have for you.
Okay.
Okay?
I need to ask Mayor, I need to ask her something since she's standing there. Will you tell us why are we here tonight?
We're here tonight to determine whether the decision that Planning Commission made was within their authority. Did they follow the requirements of the code? Did they make findings? Did they establish conditions that would assure that any development such as that which is proposed would mitigate its impacts?
So we're not here for 103 Marquette.
We are here for that.
Here to put the tank there, right?
We're there to determine whether a tank can be placed there. Whether the tank has to go there, if it's approved, is somebody else's decision entirely.
But since the Planning Commission says it can go there, what do we do tonight? We make up our mind if it's going to go there or if the Planning Commission made a mistake. You've heard me say 100 times, not in my backyard. So now I'm wanting to know if the Planning Commission was correct saying it's going in your backyard.
Planning Commission evaluated the information in the application. It compared that information against the requirements of the Hot Springs Code.
Okay.
And made a determination that with specific conditions, that site at 103 Marquette would be suitable. Not that it had to be.
Mayor, can I try to clear something up? I think I want the board to know and the public to know that our staff and our engineers are still evaluating additional sites. We intend to bring next Tuesday at your work session, hopefully, 3 potential sites. Each of those sites, this could be among those 3. And so this decision is only did the Planning Commission act within its authority. It's not, this is the place where the tower's going to be. I don't want to misrepresent because it could be this place, and I think there are people here that feel strongly about this, but I also think that there's a reasonable chance it could be one of these other alternative sites that we're also looking at. Some of them are going to have increased costs. Some of them may have other groups, other people here objecting for similar reasons or different reasons. But tonight is not the decision that says it goes there. It's only a decision that says, did the Planning Commission make a mistake in saying that it could go there? Okay. You're ultimately the decision makers of where it goes, not the Planning Commission. Yeah.
Thank you.
Help me out then, David, as to, let's say the action tonight is to uphold the Planning Commission's decision, that it did not err in application of the rules of which they govern them. And we look to another, we have our planning session, we look at alternate sites, and we decide that, no, this is this site that we looked at tonight, or not looked at, but is of the subject tonight as it relates to the Planning Commission's decision is the best site. What's the next step then?
So if you determine next Tuesday that this site is the best site, and you also determined tonight that there wasn't an error?
Correct.
Then this site could become...
No, but what is the next, well, you keep saying could. What is it? Is it, do we come back to this, to the board and...
There's a pending offer and acceptance that requires the board's approval, so if you uphold the Planning Commission's decision tonight and ultimately find that 103 Marquette is the place that you want to consider for construction of a water tower, that offer and acceptance will come to this board for its consideration. You will vote it up or down. After that, there will be construction plans and contracts will be brought to you for your approval and consideration.
So there's, as they say, another bite at the apple. As it relates to the up or down on the offered.
We hope to have 3 apples for you on Tuesday.
May I ask a question?
Seller is reluctant. Seller, forgetting about that, he
Could we have a board discussion,
Let's
please?
continue. This is director discussion. Mr. Director,
I would like to follow up on Director Williams' statement about 3 possible locations for it, and he used it just as an example. I realize that we are dealing not with a determination of whether this is where the thing is supposed to be, but rather did the commission follow the rules that they were empowered to follow. However, if you have 3 other sites, we would go through this process, or I should say they would go through this process in a similar fashion, correct? Including FAA approval.
Yes. For example, to use Director Williams' example, if there were 3, and all 3 of them were brought to the Planning Commission for consideration of conditional use, each one of them would have been evaluated independently, not based on which one the Planning Commission felt was the best location. Right. Location A would go through the process. Does it meet the standards? Location B would go through the process. Does it meet the standards? Location C, so forth. And they might find, that all of them do, or none of them do, or one of them did. Yeah. In this instance, the Planning Commission made a decision that 103 Marquette met the standards as set out in the code. Now, granted, there are other considerations. And I'm glad I'm not in your shoes on those other considerations. But the mere standards under 16-272 spell out what they were supposed to look at. The standard of appeal on this, I think this bears noting that appeals are to the Board of Directors, you. They shall be de novo. That's a little Latin phrase. It means afresh. However, they shall first be considered on the record of the public hearing and the Planning Commission meeting at which the original case was heard and the original decision was made. So that's what you're doing now. Based on this review, the Board of Directors may affirm the Planning Commission's decision, reverse it, or send it back to the Planning Commission for further study and recertification. If new information is placed before the Board that, in the opinion of the Board, would affect the Planning Commission's decision, the Board may refer it back to the Planning Commission for further study, including the new information and recertification.
So if we find for the commission and deny the appeal, the construction of a water tower at that location still has to be approved, subsequently has to be approved by the board.
Your decision tonight is not going to decide whether or not a tower is constructed there.
Okay, I want to make sure. Does the issue come back to the board as to where specifically the site will be constructed?
Well, on at least 2 facets. One, are you going to purchase the property?
Right.
That's not a done deal. It was contingent upon board's approval. So the actual purchase will come back to you, and then the subsequent contracts and funding for the construction of such a water tower.
Great. Thank you. Director Garcia?
I speak in favor of the appeal. I'm not convinced that all of the due diligence was performed to the extent that it should have been. It appears to me that at least one commissioner had concerns and may have felt duress that from staff that it needed to be, they didn't have the time to take to do further investigation. I believe that to change the zoning for this type of item to be in a residential community needs to take all the investigation that's required to meet the due diligence to ensure you've met all of the standards, and that there would better serve the health and safety of the community for consideration of other sites. And I believe that that's what was this one commissioner at least was thinking about. And that some of the information was misleading. In here it said that that was the best location. There was no evidence to support that. It was the best location. Saying that 22 lots are not built out could give the impression that it's a neighborhood not going anywhere, when we just heard one speaker tonight that he bought his home 2 years ago. The lots that, if you look up on datascout.com for the property owners, a number of property owners own multiple lots. In fact, at 103, this property is not just the lot the house is owned, but also the adjoining lot. So many of these owners own multiple lots because they want the additional property surrounding their home. So I speak in favor of the appeal.
I have
Please, Director Williams.
Well, I want to say this, and I've known Susan Batterton for a number of years. Susan, I really wish you had not filed this appeal, because as you recall, what the board was originally being asked to do was approve purchase of this site. I was going to make a motion that we table that, because I did not think we had sufficient information. I thought this was too major of a decision to make in one night, because I didn't know about the alternatives. It's like, hey, this is the site. And it's like I used it a public administration analogy, and then I'll shut up. We used to refer to it as the economic model. The economic model says you can take all these variables and all these factors, and you can arrive at a perfect solution. And from the economic or engineering model, this was a perfect site. But the political model says we look at more than just this. We look at a decision that will both be sufficient to meet our requirements and satisfy the most people, the satisficing model. So I would prefer that we had used the political model to make this decision, and I think we want to have more discussion about where we're going to put this tower. The hard place this places me is the narrow legalistic decision that's actually said, hey, just factor out all these things, and this comes down to you think the Planning Commission made the right decision. And I do think that it concerns me the Planning Commission should, if the purpose of these hearings is only to bring data that we don't have already, then I think most people think that the opportunity at those hearings is to express their views on the project itself, and that we're not considering public sentiment. And I think we should.
Thank you, Director Williams. Director Filey.
I'm trying to. This is so difficult to pigeonhole into a single issue. I realize what the charge is for us tonight, but I find it disconcerting if Mr. Bridges' testimony was, and I'll quote, there was no other site to fit the criteria. If that is an accurate statement during testimony to the commission, it belies the criteria that we're supposed to be addressing, and that is for just that one site. That is to say, we have considered other sites and they're out, but we find that not to be true. So I don't know if that statement in fact happened or occurred or not. I find that really disconcerting, and yet I find it difficult to say that the commission did not follow its own rules. If that statement was in fact included in there, I think it was misleading to the commission, and I have no idea who would have made it. Let me ask the question: if we support this appeal, what is the next step for the commission?
That would end the review by the commission, unless there was some other application that's filed for a different piece of property.
So it would not even be considered on the level of if there are three others. It wouldn't even be considered on that level anymore because it would have already been denied.
If you grant the appeal, that ends the process. If you deny the appeal, you stand subject to an appeal by Ms. Batterton to circuit court, or if you remand it based on your thoughts that there needs to be additional study.
Okay. Well, but the point that David made earlier was we are going to have a meeting. We are going to look at a couple other options, and one of those options may surface. As you indicated, we'd have to come back here. Well, Ms. Batterton would have the opportunity to take further action. we still would have to purchase the property, as you said.
Yes, sir.
And so the effect of whatever happens today is what I'm hearing Director Foley was asking. If we approve the appeal, that's off the table.
Right.
Site is.
This site's off the table, and we look at these other sites. If we acknowledge that we feel that the Planning Commission did not err in their procedural responsibilities, that doesn't mean it's going to be built. That doesn't mean we're going to buy it. It's just still available, and we go to the work session and look at these other sites.
And I know from my seat, sometimes I'm perceived as being very dogmatic about, what the law is and you can do
That's
this.
okay
but,
tonight. Go ahead.
But another factor to consider, and Ms. Patterson doesn't need me to advise her about this, is if you do not grant her appeal and she appeals it to circuit court, you're going to be tied up on this water tower anyway
Yeah.
at that location. So when you're making your decisions tonight, that's a practical consideration, not a legal one,
So
although it involves a legal procedure.
Can we remand it back to the commission with the understanding that we would like them to look at the other options as well?
Well, I mean, that's fine if there are applications for those locations. As I was speaking, Director Williams' point, the Planning Commission doesn't look at a conditional use application that way. You don't give them
Right.
3 applications
Right.
and say decide which one's best. It either complies, or it complies, or not.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there an option to table any action tonight until a later meeting following the work session?
Procedurally, yes.
Procedurally, that would be appropriate.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion to table consideration of resolution number R-17-108.
Second as well.
Is there a second?
Yes, sir, Mr. Foley.
No, for how long is there a time limit on it? I thought we put a time limit on a tabled motion.
Well, you should, considering the fact that you're going to be having a work session and other information may be coming forward. Typically, a motion to table, if there's not a time limit specified, is to the next regularly scheduled meeting.
Okay. I mean, in fairness to the appellant, I think
Yes,
we
sir.
need to put a time frame on it.
Well, let me ask the question then procedurally, because if we really, well, I guess if we felt there was another piece of property, that property we wouldn't be prepared to come to the next meeting because they'd have to go through the Planning Commission, correct?
Yes.
Well, if we're making this judgment outside of the purview of this one piece of property, and we decide that there is another piece of property that is more feasible that we would consider, and so to accomplish that, we support the appeal. That means that we have really supported the idea that the commission did not follow the rules.
That's right. That'd be right.
Okay,
And again,
I'm finding that hard to support.
well, I'll give you another practical application. The applicant of the conditional use is the City of Hot Springs.
Yeah.
You are the supreme executive and legislative body of this city. If you decide to pull that application, the application's pulled.
Right.
Well, right now we have a motion to table. We had Director Foley ask for how long, with the city attorney say normally until the next meeting. And, well, it may be, but unless we have a date certain.
You want to specify a date?
Yes, 2 board meetings,
So that'd be the,
September meeting first, or
because that would be after our work session.
September 5th is your
well, this
first.
is, right now we're into the second board meeting in July.
September 5th.
August 1st would be a meeting, and August 15th would be a meeting.
September 5th.
Sure.
September 5th would be the third meeting from now.
There would be 2 meetings.
And then that'd be the third meeting.
Yes.
Well, and if necessary, it could be tabled again, right?
I appreciate the motion and what the desire is to do, but I'd really like to dispose of this tonight, so I'm going to vote no.
But there's not a
I
second.
still need a
We don't have a
second.
motion.
Oh, okay.
We got a motion to table till the September 5th
Oh, we don't have a second?
board meeting. The motion to table until the September 5th board meeting. Is that your motion?
Yes.
I need a second to that.
I'll second.
We got a second by Director Clark. Please call any.
I speak in opposition of the motion so that the people in the neighborhood can not have to go through stress longer and longer. I say vote it up or down.
Thank you.
They're still going to have to wait till after our work session.
Yep.
Please call the roll.
Not if we,
This is on a motion to table.
Yes.
Motion to table till September 5th.
Williams,
No.
Garcia,
no.
Folly,
No.
Davidson,
No.
Jones,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
McCabe.
Yes. Motion fails.
Yes, sir. Yes.
So the motion that's currently on the floor is a motion to grant the appeal.
Mayor, I've got to ask for just one comment. I don't think people in the audience realize the design of this facility and the acoustics. All you say flows right up here. So when you're whispering, I hear you. So please keep your comments quiet. I appreciate it because often it interferes with my ability to hear what the other directors are saying. Thank you very much.
I have one more question for
Director
Ms.
Clark.
Selman. Ms. Selman, what was the, just to let everybody know, what was the vote from the Planning Commission?
I believe it was unanimous.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a denial of the motion to table, which leaves us with the current motion to approve the planning, to approve the appeal.
Can I update that? No, we on the.
No,
other one.
this was set early
Gone.
before we even began the discussion, so
Okay.
we're to the point of calling the roll. Please call the roll.
Garcia,
Aye.
Folly,
No.
Davidson,
We're approving an appeal.
If you
Right.
say aye, you're basically saying that the planning commission erred.
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Clark,
No.
Williams,
Aye.
McCabe.
No. Motion is approved. The
That's
resolution is adopted. Our next agenda item is consideration of Resolution R-17-109, and I'd ask the city manager to read by title only.
No, let him
The attorney, you mean?
file out.
City attorney, I'm sorry.
Thought that's what he said.
Did I say?
He said city manager.
Well, I heard attorney.
Okay.
But why don't we wait till they vacate?
Can we take a 5-minute
We'll give you a
recess?
minute, but we'd like you to hold your comments down because we can begin as soon as we can hear each other. Thank you.
That's what our government is all about. How many times do we get this kind of input from the community? I think it's great.
It is. I just put a new unit in.
Something's not right. Yeah.
I think we can go ahead. They're a little quieter and almost out. So, City Attorney, please read by title only.
Resolution R-17-109, a resolution awarding a bid to TG Excavating for 2017 Pipeline Rehab Phase 2 Wastewater Project. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt and have discussion if any.
Thank you. We got a motion by Director Jones, seconded by Director Foley. We have a staff report. City Engineer, Gary Carnahan.
Thank you, Mayor. We're trying to complete our consent administrative order work that we funded with the $40 million wastewater bond. And we have funding available to make some more repairs to our wastewater system and eliminate inflow and infiltration, replace some old sewer mains that have been in place for a long time. And so we advertised this 2017 pipeline rehab project, which is, by the way, up in the Whittington neighborhoods up above the Whittington Avenue area. And we received 2 bids. The low bidder was TG Excavating. The amount of the bid, $1,464,444. Our consulting engineer wrote us a letter explaining that he was familiar with this company and had good references on them and recommended that we award the contract to TG Excavating. So we're asking you to approve the award of that contract tonight.
Any questions of Mr. Carnahan?
Yes, ma'am.
Had RJN worked with them before? I know they did the follow-up with Fayetteville and Fort Smith.
Fort Smith, yes.
But they had worked with this contractor?
That's my understanding, is they worked with them in Fort Smith.
Okay, but they haven't done any jobs here
No.
in Hot Springs. I was noticing on their bids that there were some items that was quite a bit difference between the other bidder, and I was surprised because they're from Tulsa, right? And Hot Springs, they underbid a Hot Springs company. So
I think the word, yes.
So, but the RJN and our engineering departments all comfortable with what prices they put for each component.
Yes, we are. RJN reviewed that, and we've had good success following their lead in following their recommendations.
Yes,
So.
I know that they've done a lot of work and very dependent on a lot of their models. But I just was concerned that even with being from Tulsa compared to Hot Springs Company, they were still $144,000 or more less. So I just wonder what that says about the other pricing. Because they do a lot of other jobs here.
Right.
It just was.
That's
it was just
you bring up a good point. Bidding is always a little bit mysterious. How one bidder will be low, and then the next time they'll be higher, and it has to do with a lot of factors that we don't know probably, but it has somewhat to do with other projects they have at the time, and I think the word's getting out that we have a lot of work going on over in Hot Springs, Arkansas, and with the water system improvements that we have in our forecast, we're getting calls from people from time to time saying, when are you going to be starting work on that big water main, and when are you going to start work on that water treatment plant and things like that. So even in advance of us doing any of that work, other companies are looking at this area and I think trying to get connected with the city of Hot Springs.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions of the board to the city engineer? Thank you,
Okay,
Mr.
thank you.
Garnahan. We have one speaker that has signed up, one citizen has signed up to speak on this issue. And I'd like to call upon Mr. Toth.
It's
I wrote it
Toth
down 3 different ways.
Toth like both. I understand everybody gets it wrong. They want to say it's Toth like moth, but it's Toth like both.
Thank you.
My name is Mark Toth. I'm president of the
Thank you,
Whittington-
Mr. Toth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Mark Toth. I am president of the Whittington Valley Neighborhood Association, and I'm obviously speaking in favor of this project. But the issue I want to address is I want to thank city staff. Gary Carnahan gave me a heads up on this project good 3-4 months ago so that we could talk to our members, tell them that this work is coming, inform them of the need for detours and, disruptions that may result. We also were told that because they're going to be tearing up a lot of the side roads off Whittington, some of the roads that we'd asked to be paved weren't going to be done this year. You don't pave a road and then tear it up to put in sewer lines. And I just wanted to thank staff. I know that we can disagree sometimes, Gary, on projects, but they are remarkably professional, and they are a compliment and an asset to this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Toth.
The buddy upset.
We have no other presenters or citizens to talk. Any comments of the directors?
Man.
If none, please call the roll.
Foley,
Aye.
Davidson,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Clark,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Garcia,
Aye.
McCabe.
Aye.
Is approved.
Our final resolution tonight is R 17-110. Ask the city attorney to read by title only.
Resolution R 17-110, a resolution in support of the establishment of a lawful medical marijuana facilities within the city of Hot Springs, Arkansas. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would, entertain a motion second to
I
adopt.
so move.
We have a motion to approve by Director Jones. We have a second by Director Williams.
Second.
And our staff presenter is?
I think I can handle this, or Director Williams.
You go ahead, and then if I want to add something, I will.
I believe this is in response to the board's most recent, when they repealed their moratorium on medical marijuana facilities, basically the permits and applications associated with them. I think that was on July the 11th. The board did repeal that moratorium, and essentially this support resolution is in an effort to eliminate any type of perception whereby the city of Hot Springs would appear to be unfavorable or in the way of these type of facilities. So this resolution here supports lawful medical marijuana facilities, which are obviously coming to the state here in the relatively near future.
I think you did an excellent job. I was going to say that, did you watch your interview on Channel 11?
No, sir.
Did anybody else?
Yeah, he was on the 6 o'clock.
Okay. Did you not notice that the woman reporter referred to this several times as a ban?
Yes.
Did anybody else note that? A ban. That we were past, we had lifted our ban, She didn't say more ban, so I just think we got the wrong impression unintentionally of what we were trying to do. I did want to say that I talked to a friend of mine on the Medical Marijuana Commission, and those guys are really being worked hard. I said, how much do you get paid for that? And he said, well, after taxes, something like $65 a meeting. But the amendment itself says there'll be no less than 20, no more than 40 dispensaries, and no less than 4, no more than 8 cultivation licenses. So right now, the commission is looking at 32 dispensaries that will be granted permits, and they will issue 4 dispensary licenses in each of the 8 zones. There are 8 zones. I talked about that map. We're in Zone 6. But further, if a county within that zone or a city voted against it, then the preference is going to go to a county or city that support it. And in that zone, there are only 2 counties, Garland and Saline, that supported it. So there'll probably no more than 4 dispensaries in these 2 counties, and if you divide that up, probably 2. These are going to be very tightly regulated facilities. And so, anyway, thank you.
Director Foley.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to amend this motion, or at least the resolution, I should say. It is one thing to support the laws of Arkansas and to not give a message that we're opposing those laws. But I also don't want to create the impression that because we support it, we're not going to pay attention to any fees that we may be able to obtain from this. So I would like to amend the resolution to read, the Board of Directors wished to express its support for the establishment of one or more lawful marijuana facilities add, including market competitive fees for construction and operation of same
You know,
within the corporate limits of Hot Springs, Arkansas.
I'm going to speak against his amendment.
Well, we need a second first before you speak.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second by Director Garcia.
I think that's something to, I mean, this is just a generic, hey, we support these facilities. We can come in later. Texarkana has, I think we need to, they are putting a $7,500 license fee on that.
1,000.
Huh?
Is it 7,500?
$7,500 for a business to acquire a business license. Then the license will renew yearly at $11,250. A marijuana cultivation application or operation, will require a $50,000 per year business permit. I think we're trying to do too much with this resolution, with your amendment.
Any other
That's what I
comments?
think.
Any other discussion?
Noted.
Everybody clear on the amendment?
I've been asked to repeat the
Could you-
motion. The motion is to amend the resolution. In the last sentence, I'll note where I added, the Board of Directors wish to express its support for the establishment of one or more lawful marijuana facilities, adding, including competitive fees for construction and operation of same within the corporate city limits of Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Well, you just doubled the length of that.
Well, I'm not counting the words, I'm looking at
I'm
intent.
just curious,
couldn't have
what's the
in.
goal with what you've added?
I don't want to leave the impression that because we're welcoming these into our community, that it goes without fees. And beside that, we have an opportunity to collect some fees because I would imagine that we are going to have some more city work that applies to these facilities, specifically in the police area.
Well, Director Foley, first of all, the state has to approve these. I mean, when we be counting our chickens before they've hatched. But say they do approve a couple of dispensaries here, it is very much my intention that we do that. But I just think that this was modeled exactly after the Eureka Springs resolution. I mean, I didn't dream this up on my own. I was on vacation up there, went by City Hall, picked up something, and you've already amended this once.
I understand.
I mean, originally, I just wanted to address the issue of dispensaries, because we're not going to get a cultivation facility in Hot Springs, and I agreed that to get your vote. But I'm not going to agree to the second
That's fine.
amendment you proposed. Sorry.
Any further comments?
what
Any further
America's about.
discussion?
Well, we got all this land. You don't know what's going to happen.
Well, we're not going to get a cultivation facility in Hot Springs, okay? We're going to get a dispensary or two, but we're not going to get a cultivation facility.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to amend. Everybody clear on?
Kill him, not let me talk.
Please call the roll on the motion to amend.
Davidson.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Williams.
Emphatically no.
Noted. Garcia.
Aye.
Foley.
Aye.
McCabe.
Aye.
Motion's adopted.
I'll entertain a motion to adopt resolution as amended.
So moved.
I'm sorry.
moved.
Director Clark,
Second.
Director Foley made the second. Any further we already discussed this, so call the roll, please.
Jones.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Williams.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Foley.
Aye.
Davidson.
Sorry. Aye.
Davidson.
Okay. McCabe.
Aye.
It is adopted.
It is adopted. And now we've got comments from the Board of Directors. Any comments of the Board of Directors?
At the last meeting, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Go ahead.
Director Garcia raised your hand appropriately.
Apologize.
Recognized.
I wanted to thank Chief Stacy and Chief Chapman and Officer Williams for presentations at the District 5 meeting yesterday. And it was also Chief's birthday. And we had a cake and sang happy birthday to Chief Stacy.
Very
But
nice.
thank you for being there.
Director Foley.
I'm going to withhold.
No, you can't withhold.
The compliments are this for the same person. For
okay.
Chief Stacey and the whole department for the monumental effort they're making at improving the relations with the community, their involvement with the community, one-on-one, group by group, neighborhood by neighborhood. It's impressive, Chief Stacey. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. When we're looking at reducing crime, there's only one way we're going to reduce it, and that's to get community involvement, and they're doing it. So thank you again.
They told me in the hood you don't want them on the corner no more.
Any other comments?
Sorry.
No? Director Jones, anything else? Director Davis and Director Clark? Director Williams? All right.
I move that we adjourn, man.
We have that motion. We have a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
We got community comment.